All right, we're turning our attention to the All-Ireland football final replay. I'm delighted to say Paddy Christie is with us to talk to us a little bit, specifically, Paddy, about the defensive issues that the Dubs are going to face against Kerry this weekend. Good morning to you. How are you doing?
How's it going, Ger? How are things?
If you were Jim Gavin, what would you do when it comes to David Clifford this weekend?
Well, I'm a long way from Jim Gavin for a start, Ger. So just to make that very clear, in the little bit of experience I have, I suppose what I've said to everyone is I just think I would continue on playing him. I would start him, but I just wouldn't start him in that position. I think you're looking for trouble. It'd be a very big call for Jim to stick him back on him. And Johnny is well capable of marking, by the way, but I just don't see the point of it when you've had that problem the last day. I think you just put him into a different position, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. It still leaves the issue of what you do with Clifford, or did Mick Fitzsimons do well enough in the second half that you go, grand, that's your job now, you look after that. We don't expect you to win that battle, but just don't lose it horribly.
Yeah, well, I thought Fitzsimons did well when he moved on to him. I thought he did very well, really, in light of the fact that, you know, there was good ball going in, and Kerry in patches during the game were playing quite well. So in the full back line, as I would have known myself over the years, if the team is struggling out the field, it can be very difficult in there. And I thought Fitzsimons did well in that regard, under severe pressure sometimes. So I think, you know, you have to sort of say to yourself, look, we're going to concede a couple of points to this fella. He's a very good player. The worry is, Jared, that in the first 15 minutes he actually missed a lot as well.
Yeah.
So he's capable of doing a lot more damage than what he did. I thought there was one near the end, he dropped short. It was a really bad one. And the first couple, I think, went wide as well in the first half. So, he's not even firing on all cylinders. And yes, he was trouble. Very cute as well. So you want a fella with a bit of experience. So I think Fitzsimons the right fella for him, you know.
Yeah, and funnily enough, he was one of the Kerry players who did have a lot of experience of being in Croke Park on All-Ireland final day, given that he was a minor so recently. Now, I don't know how useful that experience was. I don't know if that was nerves in that first 10, 15 minutes where he was trying to do too much himself and have a few Hollywood shots. But you've seen him take those before, and they tend to go over. So what would break even be from a Dublin perspective when it comes to Clifford's influence on the replay?
I think if you can keep him to 3 points, I think you'd be happy with that. Any more than that, and it starts creating trouble, particularly if you're not scoring as much up front yourself. So I suppose that therein lies the problem, in that the other end, Con O'Callaghan and the other boys didn't really fire on all cylinders, so that you weren't getting as much as you normally get. So for me, if you can keep them to 3 points the other end, assuming that the lads will improve up front with Dublin, I think if you can keep Clifford to 3 points the other end, you'd be happy with that, you know.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that famously happened after the Donegal defeat, the last time that Dublin were beaten in Championship, was that they developed a brilliant sweeper system, and there was a very bespoke role where Cian O'Sullivan had that job. He doesn't look like he's going to be fit enough for the replay. Do you try and have a sweeper this time as pronounced as it was when Cian O'Sullivan was the de facto designated sweeper, or do you do something different?
I think it's very dangerous, Jared, to start doing that sort of stuff in a once-off game, having not really gone down that track for a while. I suppose if you look at Kerry, they had, I think it wasn't it Paul Murphy sort of tried that in the semi-final, it didn't really work. Now, I know it actually worked a bit better this time around when he went back in the second half. I think he sort of tended to be a free role. But I suppose I'd be just wary of somebody just coming in out of nowhere, not necessarily off the bench, but one of your starting 6 men or one of your midfielders or half forwards going back in as a spare man, having not really done it all year. I think it's very dangerous, and it's a little bit easy just to say, actually, just stick somebody back there and he'll mop it up. There's only specific people that can play that role and know how to play. And even if you look at Paul Murphy, he's a fine footballer, but he struggled against Tyrone, and he was sort of non-existent in patches of the game, didn't really have any effect. And McShane did a lot of damage full forward, and he couldn't do anything about it. So I think the idea of just parachuting somebody in there or changing things around just for a once-off game is very, very dangerous, you know.
Okay, so if Cian O'Sullivan isn't fit, don't do it.
I think that, personally speaking, again, I'm supposed I can only see through my own coloured glasses of being in full back, but I think if people out the field, midfield and the half forward line in particular, are putting severe pressure on people kicking in the ball, that's just as effective as having somebody inside. And Kerry, in fairness, one of the things spoke to Jack O'Shea about there last week, their kick passing is really, really good, and like in those open spaces, a really good footballer with a good kick pass will take out a sweeper. You know, he'll just put it over him or to the side of him. So there's not a huge benefit unless somebody is really, really top notch. I think you'd be better off with man-on-man battles and putting pressure on people kicking the ball in. You know, a wing forward putting severe pressure on a wing back rather than this idea of just dropping people back. I think that's particularly when it's not really part of your game. I don't think Dublin they did play that before with Cian O'Sullivan, but he's not around obviously for whatever reason. And I think he was a really good guy for doing that, and he knew what he was doing, and he grew into the role. But I think putting somebody in like that is very dangerous, you know.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, and I can see that then you would be asking your half-forward line to make sure that they're as defensively minded as they possibly can be whenever there is breaking ball or whenever there's a ball being kicked into the full-back line.
Yeah, so, well, just the kicking in, Jerry, just when the ball is being kicked, that people are on top of them, that they're either trying to block him or harry him, or that the kick is just not from a fella who's standing there toe-tapping the ball and can just pick and choose, because to be honest with you, even an average forward is going to win a ball ahead of the back if he has loads of space and the ball is kicked in when he wants it. You know, that's the way it should work. So you have to make sure that you're putting, extreme pressure on those fellas kicking the ball in so they can't get the right type of ball, or the balls have to go into the corner. A low, bad ball into the corner. You can sort of put up with that as a fullback or a cornerback because the fella has a long way to go. The forward has a long way to go to get in. But if somebody has to pinpoint the ball onto a fella's chest, in and around the D there, that's panic stations for anyone in the full back line, you know.
Tommy Walsh represents a different challenge from the rest of the Kerry forwards for the Dublin defence. What do you do when Tommy Walsh is on the field? What would you do?
Well, I think the go-to man, the last one in the overall plan is James McCarthy. I think went on to him before. I think that happened in the league, and I think he sort of picked him up a bit in the last match. But then again, these matchups that people are talking about, like, I'm not a big believer in them because there's so many changes that happen during a game. There's so many switches, and it's very hard for somebody to be on somebody designated for the whole game. You know, it just doesn't work like that. From my point of view, I would be fearful of him starting. I wouldn't like to see him starting because I think he represents a completely different type of game that you can't be sure if Dublin are ready for that. Like, they haven't really been challenged in that way with a fella under a high ball around the edge of the square. And if it comes off, it's a very hard plan to stop. It can, it can go very bad as well, and that people can hoof ball in and the defence comes flying out with it, and it's a launch pad for Dublin attacks. But if the man wins the ball in or around that danger zone and they start getting scores off it, like, it's very hard to stop it, Jerry, because a ball being kicked in from 50 yards, like, how do you stop that? It doesn't even have to be a pinpoint ball. Once it's sort of a diagonal ball, sort of, say, from right half forward into the edge of the square or whatever, you're left under severe pressure, and then the man wins it. You can't really foul him because it could be in around the square, and you saw what happened the last day with balls in around the square if you foul. So that would be a concern for me. I'd hope, Jim is going to have a plan for that, and I don't know who he's got designated to sort that out, but I mean, it is a concern for me anyway. It's always been a concern in that other teams, I'm surprised they haven't tried it more often, but in this particular case with this fella, I think, the alarm bell should go off if he comes on or if he starts,
He's a fairly unique athlete, in fairness. That there aren't that many Tommy Walshes around the country who you could kind of bank on with his nous and experience and strength. He's a horse of a man, is how Kieran Donnelly referred to him last week on the show. So I can see why everybody else hasn't had the opportunity to try it. But Dublin have, over the last couple of years, had moments in games where a ball in has resulted in a bit of carnage. You think even Galway got a bit of joy off it, even when Cluxton was in goals a couple of years back. So I can see exactly why Kerry would be looking to do that. Is the answer to that problem, though, the same answer to the problem that they have with good quality ball going into Clifford? Make sure that Niall Scully and Howard and John Small are absolutely preventing any proper ball going in.
But the problem, Jerry, with that one, you're sort of half right. Like the one we spoke about originally is really quality ball going on top of somebody's chest or bouncing in front of them at an angle in around the D. With this one, it's harder to prevent. I mean, with the best will in the world, how is John Small or Brian Howard meant to stop somebody hoofing a ball? Somebody doesn't have to put much thought into it. Once it's an angle ball at a certain height with a fellow underneath it like Tommy Walsh, it's it's dangerous, and it's hard to stop that. Now, the only fellas who stopped it, I saw it before happening properly, were Tyrone years ago with Donaghy, actually, because Kerry tried it, and they just kept, like, they put incredible pressure on the kick in, that to the point where they actually couldn't kick the ball in at that angle. But it's very, very difficult to do that. If you think of a wing back and the amount of space that a wing forward has and how open the game is, like, to stop him being able to just basically lamp a ball in on top of the edge of the square is much harder than the little sort of a tread pass through, you know. So yeah, they can do it, Jared, but it's going to take an enormous work rate to do something like that. To stop a ball, to basically suffocate them, to stop the ball coming in like that would be an incredible achievement now.
Paddy, do you think we'll see Philly McMahon at some point in this game? It feels like this is an All-Ireland final made for somebody like Philly to come in.
Well, you'd love to see him come in the last 15 minutes and maybe end up in the half-forward line popping a ball over the bar. That's what his trademark has been for a while. Like on the other end, he has that bit of experience and physicality. Obviously, that you'd hope that if the game was up in the air with a few minutes to go, he'd be the right type of fella to come in. I suppose, you know, Jim is such an embarrassment to riches that these things happen where good players with experience end up not playing, and it's just one of those things. It mightn't necessarily that he's playing poorly in training or that he's not up to it. It just is that the group had been moving fairly well. I mean, they had been moving quite well till that final, and it was a once-off game, and Jim might look and say, look, these fellas are entitled to have a bad day, and we're going to go with the same six again. And then you're looking at bringing Philly off the bench, I think. But I definitely think at some stage, particularly if it gets very physical, I think he'd be the right man for the mix there, you know.
Yeah, a potential marker for Tommy Walsh, given his ability to mark Aidan O'Shea in recent years as well.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not necessarily to clean him out in the air, because with due respect, I don't think he'd be particularly strong in the air, but he is strong. He is physically strong, and if a fella wins the ball in the air and comes down, I think it's going to be very hard to go by him. He's in great shape, and he's a good tackler, disciplined tackler, aggressive, and it's going to be hard to go by him. So he's certainly an option, I think, if things aren't working out. If
you were picking this team, would you make any changes for the replay?
For the Dublin team?
Yeah.
I'd like to think that Mannion and O'Callaghan will improve greatly. Like, I'd be big fans of theirs, particularly O'Callaghan. I think he's a superb player, and I think he just dropped down a couple of notches. But his dropping down a couple of notches is still the equivalent of a 9 out of 10 for a lot of people, you know. Yeah. I mean, he's a really, really good player. All those fellas up front, I would stick with them in the defence. Like, yes, the full back line were under pressure, but I think they're worth their go again. I mean, midfield, the two lads struggled a little bit as well. I mean, they struggled all over the pitch, and yet they were still in the game and still pushing in the last few minutes. So, I mean, I would give them all a shot. I wouldn't see anyone being an automatic substitute there. I think you'd go with those 15, and then you'd certainly be a little bit quicker maybe to make changes this time, that's all. Yeah, that's a fair point. Paddy, good stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us. No problem, Jared. Talk to you. Paddy Christie giving us some thoughts there, former Dublin fullback, of course, at 8:46 this morning. You can see the case being made for not making changes if you're in the selection meeting this week with the Dublin management team going, no, hang on a second, this is the team that has reached this point. Several of them underperformed chronically compared to what they're capable of doing. If they all were to go up 5-6% for the replay, then that's going to be enough to get Dublin through. Now, the other side of that is that, of course, you would expect Kerry to come on for their game. The amount that they come on from the semi-final performance, the amount that they improved in the second half of the semi-final versus the first half of the semi-final is about the same amount that they improved from the semi-final to the first game in the final. And so if they repeat that level of improvement for the replay, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be making Kerry favourites for this game if they improve as much as that. Let's hear from Mark O'Shea. Here he is talking to Joe last night about how Dublin are going to try and stop David Clifford. Maybe he needs to, if he probably changed up his tack, like that ball that we keep seeing replayed where he's pulling his hand, maybe if he was playing him from the front, you know, because Clifford isn't going to kill you for pace, but like, you know, if you're out in front of him and the ball is kicked over the top, you have the chance of maybe getting back. So I don't know. It's an interesting it's an interesting one. Fitzsimons certainly did better when he went back on him. Yeah. But I think that, you know, Cooper's a serious player, and you know he
he obviously got sent off, but I think that he's going to be massive for them in the replay. You know,
Clifford's tall as well. Like, he can catch it over your head. I mean, look.
Yeah, he's very tall.
He's not easy. All the hype for a long time has kind of been justified. He's a serious prospect.
He is. Look, he kicked 4-4 in the minor final.
I was at that one and I thought, my God, yeah.
Obviously, minors and seniors, a different ball game, but like, to kick 4-4. Now, the last day he went out and missed 2 in the first half, then missed 1 in the second half, kicked 2 points from play, had a few frees, won the penalty, and his man gets sent off, and we still think he only played fair. So, like, I think there's a huge game in him. We need him to perform for Kerry to win, but look, we need a lot of things to happen. A lot of it went right the last day, but I think a lot more needs to go right, Joe.
All right, so you can get the full thing available wherever you get your podcasts, or of course it's on youtube.com/offtheball. Hit subscribe in the top corner there, and anytime we go live on YouTube, we'll let you know about it as well.